Good morning. Welcome to this live webinar. I'm Dave.
Hi there, good morning. My name is Ivar.
Yes. So before we get started with this webinar today, I would like to highlight that you have the opportunity to leave questions in the Q&A tab. So please feel free to leave them there and we will review the questions at the end of the webinar. So that being said, Ivar, we're going to talk about loudspeaker placement and everything what comes with that.
Yeah, so I think it's good just to start. We have, I hope, 30 minutes webinar, so not too long with respect for everybody's time. So I think let's start talking about loudspeaker placement.
Yeah.
Loudspeaker design made easy, and that's what we are going to show you today. We're going to cover a tool that we introduced 2 years ago, I guess now.
Yeah.
And with the use of this tool, loudspeaker design is quite easy. And why did we build this tool? Well, we saw in the past, and still nowadays, people don't know what type of loudspeaker to pick for what application. And if you are experienced, maybe you think I can do it myself, hand drawing. But we introduced a tool to help you with that.
Yeah. So let's we're going to take a look at the tool, Ivar, and the tool is a tool. You can still do your hand drawing and do your own calculations as you following the guidelines that we have. But the tool is kind of linked to the guidelines, but it's really going to help you to simplify that.
And what you just said is really important. We have guidelines. So with all the loudspeakers that we have, we provide loudspeaker guidelines that can help you, and you can find that on the website. So that's a guidance of how to place and where to place and determine your spacing with the speaker that you have chosen, let's say. But we have a tool, and that's the BMSD, the Business Music System Designer tool. That's what we are going to cover today.
Exactly.
So good point, Dave.
Let's take a look to the tool, Ivar.
Yeah, well, first I want to show the people because we wanted to, well, we prepared a venue, one of our customers.
That's right.
That we're going to cover with the tool, because sometimes in a small, let's say, if you're doing retail or a small bar, or maybe it's easy for you, maybe you have some experience with some loudspeakers that you often choose. That's, of course, that's fine. Today we are going to cover a big room. So it's background music. We only talk about background music systems. So we're not going to cover foreground systems such as room at utility or arena at utility or even bigger. We talk about design max, free space, edge max.
Exactly.
And first, I think it's good to see the venue that we're going to use today.
Yeah.
So this is the venue, and this is a quite large room. It's
yeah, it's 20 by 40 meters, so it's really a large room.
Yeah, you can see the room can go up to 1,200 people or so. So this is a quite big one. And what's interesting to see in the room, and you can see it here, is this is a room that's already built, and you see also the ceiling. You see some things in this room that you need to take care of.
Yeah.
So we need to take care of that as well. So I think it's good to start with the tool and see what is going to happen if you enter the dimensions in the tool, Dave.
Yeah. So I will grab my laptop.
Yeah.
I'll bring it here. So yeah, in order to get to the tool, you just have to navigate to pro.bose.com. It's the website that I have in front of me. And that's on the landing page you have a menu structure, and on the products you can find software. So we navigate to software, and this is the page where on our Pro website where we have all our tools lined up. So from acoustical design, signal processing, all the way on the bottom you will find system design. So this is the application that Ivar just talked about, the Business Music System Designer. And it's an online tool, so you don't have to download any software, etc. You can just go there and then navigate to Business Music Designer link here on the bottom, and that opens the tool.
This is platform independent.
Yeah. So I'm currently on a Microsoft computer, but it runs just as good on another platform like Apple or any other notebook that has a browser. Yeah. So yeah, so this is basically the landing page for the tool. You see in the middle, that's where you have an overview. Now there is a nice picture of a restaurant, but on the left side you have a toolbar that says configurations, and that's where you start.
It's a sort of wizard.
Yeah, it's a wizard based, so that's actually, it's not bringing you to new windows. You can just walk through this tool pane on the left side. Let's start. You have the loudspeaker family. So if you just open up, you see all the loudspeakers and the loudspeaker families that we have. So let's stick to Design for now.
So does that mean that you can choose your loudspeaker if you know what model you want to use already, or?
Exactly.
Okay.
So if you you can so start with a family like Designmax or FreeSpace, or you can also go to, for example, EdgeMax.
Yeah.
So if you have a kind of already a direction to your pointer, you can select the loudspeaker family, or you can just start somewhere and look to compare different families with each other.
Okay.
So I'll leave it on the default for now. And then you select on the second the loudspeaker location. Is it surface mount, flush mount, or pendant mount? Then you have the dimensions for the space. In the specific use case that we talk about, we know the dimensions, so I'm going to enter them. It's important to select your measurements or the dimensions metrics. So we choose for metric. We work with a metric system here in Europe, but you can also use the other one. So let's. I'm going to fill in the dimensions for the use case that we have. So the length was 40 meters here.
Yeah.
And you can just easily tap through by pressing tab to the next field. The width was 20 meters. And then the height was 6. Yeah. Is it 6? Yeah. All right. So then you have the listening height. It's also important. Maybe we can talk a little bit about that, Ivar.
Yeah.
Why is that so important?
Yeah, you have to decide what type of application you have. So because of the coverage that the system needs to advise you, we need to know on what height your audience is listening. So if it's a sitting audience, it's a different height than standing. So, and that makes a difference between your spacing of the loudspeakers. So in this case, we have a giant room. It's a ballroom application.
Yeah.
So I can imagine that in the photo you saw the chairs, the seating for the people, but this is also, I think, can be used for standing audiences. So I think you have to select standing in this.
Yeah.
To be sure that you have enough coverage.
Yeah, then you have kind of covered them both.
Yeah.
But it's indeed, thanks for clarifying that, Ivar. And just as a note here, side note, besides the areas where we have more to explain, you'll find this little question mark. And just click on it and you will see some more details around that specific topic. So this is the topic that Ivar just explained. So for coverage, we also have 3 options. Minimum coverage, standard, and premium coverage. And also there, it's important to define which coverage area or what is the target that you're after, whether it's minimum, standard, or premium. Kind of the way that I usually do it is just to start with a standard, and then you can always deviate back to a minimum coverage target or a premium coverage.
I always start with premium.
Yes, it's where depending where your starting point is.
Yeah, then the just it's also a little joke, but the better the coverage, the more speakers you need. But
exactly.
No, this is also a budget setting, let's say. So at least you need minimum. But we recommend to start with standard. Just that's the standard coverage that we advise you. And if you want the best coverage, you can select premium. But that takes different loudspeakers or more loudspeakers.
Yeah.
So, but it's a good approach to start with standard.
Right. So then we'll scroll down a little bit. You can start, with some, what the desired volume should be for your application, whether it's background or foreground music. And just it's important to highlight a little bit here that we talk about business music systems.
Yes.
So also the definition background and foreground, we should look at that.
Yeah, this is an important setting. So because you have to decide what your customer needs for a SPL level, and to decide that, you have to understand what is 60 or what is 70 dB SPL. Well, you have to understand that yourself to make the right decision. So we have an explanation that you can see here, and what we say in that's important. If you look to level 5, you see foreground. What we basically saying is it's foreground within, let's say, the background music that we're talking about. So that's, we say the maximum level of what we call background is, let's say, 80 to 85 dB. If you go higher, then you go in a foreground system. So today we talk about background music. So level 5 is the maximum, what we say in background dB SPL.
Yeah.
And that's what we say with level 5. We call it foreground. So it's foreground in the background
Exactly.
area.
So, but it's really good to have that, kind of understanding of the definition, how we use
It's
those
really
terms.
important.
Yeah. So let's stick with 75 for now. We can always move the slider up and down. And I'm going to select show recommendations right now. So what it does right now, it's doing the calculation based on what I selected in the wizard. So it's based on design max free space, flush mount with the dimensions we entered for standing and standard coverage, with a volume of 75 dB.
Maximum.
So, maximum, yeah. So this is what the tool is going to give us, the recommendations, the Bose recommendations. We have two options here. So the first option that we can look into right now is about Design Max, the DM6C, and you see a projection of 6 DM6Cs in this design, with a spacing, so that is required for the standard coverage on a standing listening height on 75 dB.
Yeah. And now maybe you think, okay, so this is a quite big room, a large room, and we only need 6 speakers. And that's because the height of this ceiling is 6 meters. That's quite high.
It's really high.
So you can reach that with only 6 speakers. So that's interesting to see. And what's also really interesting is that you see the minimum tap. It says 5 watts.
Yeah.
So
that doesn't mean that for here it says 5 watts, and you might think, okay, this is kind of weird. This speaker can have way more than 5 watts. So this is the, really, we need to understand that this is the minimum tap for this setting on 75 dB. Of course, if you slide it up to more, we have an updated recommendation here. We're just going to use this as an example. So now we put it on 85 dBs, and then you will see the minimum tap setting is 80 watts.
that makes sense.
So this is kind of how you should interpret the minimum tap.
Yeah.
So it might look weird to say, hey, the DM6 say only on 5 watts, but that's based on your setting for the volume that you entered for the specific application.
I see 2 options.
Yeah. So right now we looked at option 1. Let's select option 2, Ivar, and here we have the DM8C.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah.
And the DM8 is, I would say, the perfect speaker for those kind of applications. This is a quite big one as well, and we designed this model, let's say, specific for those kind of rooms. So height ceiling, where we need a lot of output, the high directivity. This has a compression driver built in. So this is really a good speaker for those kind of applications.
Yeah. Yeah, it's really, it's maybe, if time permits, we could maybe look at what a DM8 looks like. Maybe that's good. Of course, it has some special features on board. So indeed, so these are the two options if you have the space in the ceiling. Let's make sure that if you can place loudspeakers in the settings that we have here.
Yeah, but Dave, if you take a look at the picture that you see here, this is not possible with the ceiling.
No, if you look to the use case that we showed you at the beginning, indeed the ceiling has a beautiful design in the middle. lights, fixtures, maybe some outlets from airco that we saw. So it's probably pretty hard if that specific room already exists, and that is the case in our situation, that you have the space to mount those flush mount speakers on those locations that Bose is recommending here in the tool. So therefore, okay, let's see what kind of alternatives we have if we don't have the mounting options as showed here in this recommendation.
Yeah, let's see.
So I'm going back to the configuration tab, and I'm going to select a different loudspeaker and see if there is a difference.
Let's select your favorite.
Yeah, it's my favorite.
It's behind you as well.
Yeah, so it's about the HMX family that I'm going to select here, and then of course it's going to reset. You need to take some decisions here in the tool. This looks a little bit different because it's a different loudspeaker type. So as we know, as most of us know, that the HMX loudspeaker, you can place them in the corner or on the side of the wall. So you need to select corners and mixed. So that means basically the corners and the walls on the side, or only side walls. So for now, let's stick with corners and mixed.
Yeah.
See what it brings. We have the same dimensions. We keep on listening height standing, and we stick to standards. We could leave it on 85 dBs for now and see what our recommendation is. This is a different picture, Iver.
Yeah,
it's a combination of the two HMX loudspeakers.
And now you have 6 for that big room.
Yeah.
So we had 8, and now we have 6. Makes sense. Interesting. This is, by the way, a really, really nice speaker. The HMX is a patented speaker, especially designed for mounted to the edge of the room, let's say.
And also from a coverage perspective, it's also a loudspeaker that really operates on a decent height.
Yeah.
So it has really nice coverage aspects, and for this type of room and these dimensions here, they really work out well.
Another thing, Dave. So what if we don't want loudspeakers in the corners? Because I saw that setting.
Yes. Yeah. So we can take a look. Let's see what happens. We have the setting sidewalls here. So let's move to sidewalls, and I'm not going to change anything else to the settings that we just entered, and see what the recommendation is. Hey, this is for me not a surprise, but because we looked into the details of this design, but now you can deal with just 4 of them, Ivar. See, this is the HMX 180 just on the sides, and of course you need to take the spacing in account. This is a 40 meter long room and 20 meters wide. So then, the spacing is like 10 and 20 and then 10, covering the whole area. So in this specific example, and our example of the hotel ballroom, you could do with just 4 HMX loudspeakers with a minimal tap setting of 80 watts.
Yeah, so we're talking about 800 square meters with 4 speakers.
4 speakers.
So that can also be with the HMX you are flexible. So if you want to have the corner ones, then you need 6. Maybe there's no space for the corners for some reasons, whatever, lighting system, or you can do it with 4. Of course, that's also not only the budget is one of the things that's changing now, but also the aesthetics. So so that's really interesting with the HMX loudspeaker. You are flexible, and you can make any kind of combinations, because you can also think about that room. Let's divide that 40 meters in 4 separate
areas.
Yeah. You cannot do that with the 4 speakers that you have now, but maybe you want to place 8 HMX loudspeakers, and so that every area has 2 for its own.
Yeah.
So that's also nice to have with the design mix, or the HMX, I have to say, the corners or the mixed with the 180 degree or the 90 degrees.
Yeah. So if you really have room dividers, it's of course based up to the requirements of the customer. But if you need to, if this really mostly these kind of rooms are you can divide them in multiple rooms. So then you need to look to your design and say, hey, we're not going to add loudspeakers for, more coverage, but the other requirement is that we need to separate them.
Yeah.
And then you need to have, of course, your separation. And you can look then indeed to the other design with the edge max in the corners.
Yes.
And then in the middle.
Yeah, really nice.
Yeah. So this is loudspeaker placement, and it's based on some settings that you select in the toolbar. Of course, loudspeaker placement and loudspeakers, they're nothing without an amplifier.
No.
So also there we do a recommendation in the tool. For now, in this current setting, it's showing you the amplifiers for the free space series.
Yeah. But you don't have enough power to drive those
Yeah.
Edge Max loudspeakers,
So let's select a power share. And here you have the recommendations for different amplifiers that you can use for this specific use case. Of course, it will change if you have another setting. But for the 4 Edge Max loudspeakers, you could select an amplifier from this range.
Yeah, and maybe can you go back to the free space? Sorry, the design max that we had
Sure.
In the first example.
Yeah. So let's switch back to Design Max. You want to go for the 8 or the 6, Ivar?
Just hit enter. Yeah. Let's see. You see that that's a different recommendation if you see the amplifiers.
Yeah.
This is possible with the free space. But can you also select? Let's say we want to use the DM3. So we do not want to use the DM5 or the 8, but let's try to
let's see
force the system to DM3.
So
DM3.
yeah. So instead of selecting the whole family and let the Bose tool find the best recommendation, you can of course also go direct to a loudspeaker in the drop down here. So here we see the DM3.
The design mix, yeah.
Yeah. So let's see. So you don't have to find or look for whether it's flush or surface, because that's the selection below that. So it's a flush mount. So we have new updated recommendations here. So I select show recommendations.
Yeah, now it gives you an error or a well, let's say an error, but what it basically tells you is that that's not possible with DM3, and that's because of the height of the ceiling. So with this loudspeaker, you cannot reach the SPL level. So maybe just to see what happens, if you change that SPL level, the volume level to let's say the minimum, so 70 or 60.
Let's do that.
Just to play a little bit.
Let's drop it around.
Yeah, and try again.
Let's see what happens. So hey.
Now you can.
Yeah.
So that's good to understand. So if you get that message, that means with that specific loudspeaker, something is not possible, and most of the times, in this case, I asked for the DM3. That's a quite smaller loudspeaker. You cannot reach that 85 dB.
Yeah. So that's indeed. So it gives you an error, but it basically tells you, hey, a design error. All right. So let's. We looked at the different options, and you can, really go through the different types of loudspeakers that we have and see what works. And also, it needs to fit, the requirements of the customer. It needs to fit the design, how flexible you want to be.
Yeah.
And that's, you need to take that all into account if you build a design using the tool. The tool is helping you to have the right spacing for the specific use case, and also helping you to select an amplifier for your solution.
And one more thing, I see use extended bass option, and what's good to know is when you select that,
I will do that.
It gives you a result with the DM3C together with the sub, and this is our DM8C sub. So this is a new one, a Design Max sub for flush mount, and that's what you see here. So yeah, you can also use extended bass configurations, so that makes sense.
Yeah, so that's just for this overview, Ivar. We have the placement. It pops up this question now. I look at the picture here. We see the placement for the DM3s.
Yeah.
So where actually would you recommend to put the DM8C if you look at this picture?
Yeah, that's hard to say. It gives you one DM8C. This is a quite big room.
Yeah.
So bass placement is always can be tricky. So most of the times we start with a full range loudspeaker system, and depending on your application, you want to add more bass.
Yeah.
So in my opinion, it's an additional low end what you add now, depending on what you like personally.
Exactly.
Maybe you want to add 3 of those subs or 4 in those kind of rooms. In this case, it gives you 1, and then maybe in the center would be the best. But it depends on your application.
Exactly, and that's also why I'm pointing it out. That's why the tool doesn't show you
No.
exactly where to put it.
No, of course you have to take care of with the low frequencies.
Exactly.
If you want to if you place a sub in a corner, you get extra low end due to the walls that you have around the sub. So that helps you with some dBs extra. But if you have a large room like this, it gives you the advice to use 1. Well, this is a really big room. If you have dividable walls as well, then I would add 1 in a room.
Exactly.
You can always call us to ask if you're not confident where to place your low end.
Exactly.
Your subs.
Good. All right.
I think this is the tool, and you just have to play with it. It gives you really good indication, and maybe another tip from my side: if you have let's say an L-shaped room or so, of course you can. It's not possible to add L-shaped rooms, but of course you can create multiple rooms to get that L shape, to get that advice. But you have to play with this. But this gives you a good indication.
Yeah. So before we wrap up the tool, I would also like to highlight the fact that if you have recommendations in your design that we have here, please note the blue links that you see in the design, and the links for the products that bring you directly to the product's text sheets or data sheets. So that's really helpful to quickly, you want to know more about this DM8 sub? You just click the link and you go to our website and you find all the details.
Yeah, and you can even, it's a good point, because sometimes you just want to check some things about that speaker. Maybe if it fits in the ceiling or
dimensions.
But what I also want to mention is that you can also share the results. So on the right top corner you see a button, share results, and then by clicking that you can share your results. And on the next to that button on the right side you see the print button, and by clicking the print button you can print your layouts, you can print your recommendation.
Yeah.
Which is easy for your own administration.
You can print it or save it to PDF and put it in your recommendation for your customer.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So I think this was a brief explanation about the BMSD tool, the Bose, the Business Music System Designer tool.
Exactly. So that brings us to the end of the webinar.
Yeah, I can imagine that there are some questions. If you have some questions, please let us know by using the chat window. So on the right side of your screen you find the Q&A. So please put your questions in the Q&A tab, and then we are going to check your questions.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's check the questions.
All right. So we have one.
We have one question, Dave. Is there a reason why the max volume to specify ends at 85 dB? We have a lot of projects which afford. Okay, so yes, there is a reason for that, because we talk about background music, and 100 dB or even more, that's not background music anymore. And then we talk about foreground music. So this tool is really designed for background music systems only. So that's the reason. And
we have Laurie.
Laurie,
what does the classic or modern button do? So we kind of, indeed, that's a button there as well. It's basically if we were at modern, so which is referring to the DesignMax family. If you switch to classic, you will see the free space.
Yeah, it's basically an aesthetics option, and we think that DesignMax is a more modern option.
But it's a good question. Thanks for asking.
No more questions.
So In the handout, I pushed a file, or you can download a file. It's a very nice matrix. It's an overview of the whole Designmax family. It's a kind of comparison matrix, so it's there for you to download. Also, I will be redirecting this webinar browser to the landing page of the Bose software tools, so that you can check them out. And another topic that we would highlight is that there is also a lot of educational topics are available on our global learning platform.
Yeah, correct. So I see one more question. Can you tell us more about base placement? Maybe some kind of roadmap. Should I look for location or room modes in the first place, for example? I don't know if I get this question. Of course, it's about base placement, and that's always, as I already said, can be tricky because of course, it makes sense where to put your base. Yeah, this is a hard question. As I said, walls, corners will help you, but it also means that if you have a big room like this, and you put your base in a corner, then in the other end of the room, 40 meters, well, you have less base, of course. So that's the reason why I would advise to put it in the ceiling, and then maybe if you only use one, if that's a budget thing, then I should advise you in the middle. But more about base placement, that's also a sort of experience that you need to get with base placement. So yeah, yes and no. We can help you if you have a project. If you want to know what's the best location, our engineers can help you by advising you for that specific project. We can help you with that. But
if it gets more complex, or you have really a challenge, we have also more sophisticated tools, more advanced tools, where we can really find the best place for your base solution.
Yes, and that's the Bose modeler tool, but it depends on your application. In background music, most of the times we're not using modeler because that's a quite advanced tool, and we mostly use that for foreground music already, or live sound. So if you want to know more, I advise you to reach out to our colleagues in your country, and they can help you. They can tell you more about this in your specific project. So yeah, this is hard to answer, but that's it for now. I see. Check the Okay.
We went through it. Good. So thank you for attending our webinar today. Looking forward to see you for our next webinars. We have a nice lineup that will be communicated through our marketing team. So stay tuned for more.
Stay tuned and hope to see you soon.